Hey everyone, my name is Sina Makari, here with my co-host Jack Stevenson,
How's it going?
and this is the OGMA podcast. Today we're joined by a very special guest, Yehong Zhu. Yehong is the co-founder and CTO of Zette, a revolutionary startup that will give users access to any news or magazine article, including those behind a paywall, for a one-time monthly fee. You can think of it like Netflix or Spotify for magazine and newspaper subscriptions. Even without Zette, Yehong has an incredible resume. She graduated from Harvard with a BA in philosophy and has worked at companies like Forbes magazine as a business writer, Amazon as a business analyst intern, and an associate product manager at Twitter, among others. She is also an active angel investor and has invested in 7 startups. Thank you for coming on our show, Yehong. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Sina.
thank you for joining us, Yehong, once again. Can you please tell us a little bit more about Zette?
Sure. So Zette is a way that you can access paywall news articles with one click. If you've ever tried to access a link or found something cool on Facebook or Twitter and wasn't able to read it because you ran out of articles for your free subscription, or you just hit an article paywall and you couldn't get access, Zette will actually help you unblock that article. So our core product is a Google Chrome extension or browser extension that you can download, a little bit like Honey, if you've ever used it, or other browser extensions that you might use. It pops up automatically with a notification the minute you're ready to unlock the article. This is with a paid subscription account. And then on mobile, we're actively developing a mobile app that you can use to browse and read through articles on your phone and also unlock them on the spot.
Yeah, no, it sounds like such a super cool idea. Like even a few days ago, like I was trying to read an article about something and it kept giving me that notification we've all experienced of you've ran out of free unlocks, please get a subscription. That's incredibly irritating.
Yeah,
So,
and it's
sorry,
Sorry, I just wanted to add, I was talking to Jack about this just before our call, but you can't really subscribe to every single magazine or newspaper because, I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's just a ton of money that you have to spend per month. So I think like Zed, as soon as I found out about it on Twitter, I immediately added my email address to the wait list because I'm like, I need this immediately.
Yeah, it's definitely
sorry.
been ongoing for a while for myself as well, especially since I worked as a journalist before and I couldn't read my friends' articles because even on a journalist salary, it's pretty expensive to read news, right? It's hundreds of dollars a year, and there's so many outlets that I wanted to read that it wasn't economically viable for young people really to have that kind of money to shell out and subscribe to everything if they're not avid readers of literally everything.
Mm-hmm. So just going off what you just said, were there any other components that gave you the idea to actually create Zette?
Definitely. So I would say, hearkening back to my experience as a journalist in the Forbes newsroom, I was surprised to see that the business models of journalism were really suffering, right? In terms of the economics, they used to churn out print newspapers. So if you remember ever getting, print papers at your door, and maybe your parents would read them on Sunday mornings at the dinner table, um, that used to be very straightforward. You would pay for a monthly subscription, you'd get a physical copy of a paper and you'd read it, and then the next month you'd get another copy. That is pretty much a copy and pasted business model for an online format, except the way that we actually read news today is very different. We don't sit at a website and we read the whole website cover to cover, and we read all the articles in that single site and have a subscription just to that site. The way that we read news today is piecemeal. We find an article that's shared, we'll go to a different site to find a different opinion. We'll go to a third site. We like to hop around, right? We like the kind of optionality and variety that we're used to having on the internet. And so we need more innovative models to kind of match the cadence of how users are actually using the product today.
Yeah, that's excellent. So I guess the question I would really like to ask is, which magazines and newspapers will Zette cover? And furthermore, which industries? So are you also going to be covering, celebrity news, or is it mainly going to be traditional news and business, that sort of stuff?
So the set of papers and magazines we're going to be covering for now are going to be the set of paywalled subscription papers. So that's actually a subset of all your papers. So essentially, anytime you run into a subscription paywall, those are going to be your Bloombergs, your New York Times, your Financial Times, etc., the more primo papers. Those are the set of publications we are aiming to get partnerships with. We can't yet announce our partners yet. We're working on making a public announcement once we have a product in market and in beta. But when we do, we hope to have a set of marquee publishers that we will recognize and love to read in the verticals of business and technology primarily, but also spanning culture, politics, and hopefully general news.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm kind of a political nerd myself. So I mean, I'm really excited to really dig into all those articles. And speaking of that, you have a really cool waitlist set up. Can you talk a little bit about how startups can build successful waitlists and kind of grow them?
Definitely. So there are so many ways to market your brand and your ideas out to the world. What startup founders should be focused on are, what are your distribution channels? What are the actual touch points between you and the user to find out about your product? Now, there's online distribution channels, some of which can be expensive, like buying ads on Google, and others of which can be cheap, like, for example, making free TikToks and getting the word out through audiences who are scrolling for TikTok and looking for content. There's also things you can do in the physical world, ranging from conferences where you go and get your name out there to the people you're trying to sell to partnerships with universities, to billboards, right? And so this is kind of the set of options that you have. And within that, we've mostly been focused on free organic efforts. So things like sending out a tweet that goes viral, right? That actually added 10 or 15% of a jump to our waitlist overnight, right? And other things like writing about your journey, kind of connecting through social media a lot of the times is a great way to distribute content, but also things that you can do like search engine optimization, making sure you own any searches related to paywalls or perhaps to your brand name, making sure that you're discoverable, that you've got interesting content that people want to read, and also making sure that you're reaching your audiences wherever they might be. So for example, if our audience primarily, for example, lived in Detroit and wanted to read a local newspaper that we had partnered with there, we need to make sure that we're reaching audiences in Detroit geographically, that we're targeting them, etc. And so many strategies, too many to mention in detail, but this is a little bit of the taste of how you can get a lot of users on your waitlist.
Yeah, that's amazing. But yeah, like I actually remember like when I made like the first, I think $16 with Ogma, I put out a tweet and I had about 22 followers. And I guess it was like a combination of me having like a really young face and, kind of being innocent about it. Like I'm not raising a huge Series A or whatever. I'm just happy that I made $16. And it ended up getting like 15,000 likes, even though I only had 22 followers. And that was just one of the luckiest things ever. So I totally get how Twitter, like a viral tweet can really change things up. It's amazing validation there. So yeah, Twitter's very powerful.
Yeah, so as we talk more about like social media marketing, you mentioned a lot of different variations of what you can do with social media and how effective it can be. So I just wanted to ask that what was it like being a product manager at Twitter?
Yeah, it was a very exciting experience. So believe it or not, as a product manager, I didn't actually have social media training, right? We were building the social media platforms that we use and love today, not getting trained on how to tweet or how to market effectively. But those are both very important. You both should know how to build software products and know how to take advantage of the platforms that will distribute content. In terms of my experiences, I loved it. I was an early career product manager, which means it was my first job out of college. I worked with engineers and designers very closely to iterate and ship features and products for our monthly active database of 330 monthly active users on Twitter. I was the PM for the tweets team in San Francisco, which is the headquarters of Twitter. And I was also the PM for Twitter London, the events team, where we built stuff that helped you discover cool events happening on Twitter and get access to the feeds that you want to be seeing. And so overall, I think had a lot of takeaways. Product is a really hard job. There's a lot of stakeholders that you have to manage, a lot of expectations. It's a job in which you have a lot of responsibility, but not always a lot of control over the end product. And so there's definitely things that I had to learn very quickly to adapt to, and to make sure that at the end of the day that my team, got the, features that they wanted to build out, got the credit for the hard work that they had done, and that we could celebrate the wins along the way so that it didn't just become, another job. I think I took those skills, frankly. I learned enough to be dangerous in product, and I took those skills into my own startup and into the startup world. And that's where I feel confident working with engineers and designers to build new software products that can hopefully change the way that we interact with content today.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. Wow.
Yeah. So here's something that I found really interesting going, like, while I was doing research on you for this podcast. So while you were a journalist at Forbes, in addition to writing about business, you also talked about how businesses can capitalize on Pokemon Go. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that that's really unique.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember this article. It was during the summer of 2016 when Pokemon Go was probably the #1 app in the App Store. Everyone and their mom was using it, running around New York, running around cities, catching Pokemon left and right. And so at Forbes, I was a business reporter on the retail marketplaces and trends beat. And so I was responsible for making sure that the world knew about all of the cool consumer technology or retail or the ways that businesses were making money. And so one of the ways that I wanted to write about Pokemon Go was how restaurants were taking advantage of the phenomenon to actually draw people into their restaurants. Talk about creative marketing, right? If you buy a lure on Pokemon Go, which at the time did something like attract all the nearby Pokemon in like the augmented reality space, then people would be drawn to your restaurant, right? And then once they caught the Pokemon near your restaurant, they'd maybe be hungry or thirsty or need the Wi-Fi or use the bathroom or something. They would go into the restaurant, and that's where you close the point of sale. And so there are really cool things that businesses can do to utilize new tech platforms, new products that come out to hop on like a viral trend. And for Pokemon Go, I not only saw so many users change their behavior around, literally walking around New York. You could see people flocking to, catch a Charizard or something all at the same time. But you could also see businesses, including restaurants, taking advantage of these trends to make sure that their marketing was out there, that they had sometimes Pokemon themed meals right at their restaurants. And it really took advantage of the zeitgeist of that moment. And that's something that's worth reporting on.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Yeah, that's really, really cool. I'll definitely read your articles once I implement Zette and, can read them.
Good to know.
Yeah, no, like I'd love to read that article too. That's just, I've ran out of my free trials at Forbes, so I had to wait for it to launch.
Yeah, we'll definitely be in touch with Forbes to ask them about that partnership.
Yeah, that's super cool. So I think that one of the biggest things in the startup space that a lot of people hopefully want to achieve is the attraction of an angel investor, as it provides numerous amounts of benefits, as I'm sure you're well aware of, establishes a lot of credibility. So I just wanted to ask that, what are some things that founders can do to actually attract an angel investor?
Yeah, so there's actually different kinds of investors that you can attract. There's angels and there's institutional money. They're a little bit different, but usually when people talk about VC fundraising, they're referring to institutional VCs. However, you can definitely attract angel investors. It might be a little bit easier because instead of having to convince a firm, you're really only having to convince a wealthy individual to bet on you, to support you, and to invest in your journey along the way as an entrepreneur. Some things that you can do to attract angel investments: have a good track record before you start a company, right? So for example, it might be easier to invest in me as a founder building something like Zette because I've worked in journalism and technology, right? But if you're fresh out of school, maybe if you don't have any experience in the industry you're building, that's a signal that there might be less founder market fit, right? So what you do before starting is really important for what you can do next, right? You can also utilize the connections that you have in the jobs that you did before to kind of get warm introductions and warm leads to meeting the angel investors so that you're not just a stranger and you're not just a cold email in their inbox. That being said, without the, let's say, connections that you already have, like pre-existing, you should be really good at figuring out how to make new connections. And so I can't stress enough how this is often a game of who you know, right? To even get in front of them, you need to make sure you tap somebody in their network that they might trust and that they can make a warm introduction on your behalf vouching for you and vetting you as someone who's not just someone totally random, but someone who's actually a really promising startup founder with a really ambitious idea who's worth their time and space to take a meeting with. Once you're in that meeting, everything that'll matter at that point comes down to you, right? It comes down to what are some early points of evidence or traction that you've been able to create. What are some evidences that you can recruit a really talented team to work for you? What's the scope of your vision? How big are you thinking? Is this $1 billion idea, or is it just 50 million ARR or 50 million valuated company at the end of the day, at the end of the whole journey of the life cycle of the startup that you're building? Different angel investors have different wants and needs, so it's important to research the background of the angels that you're pitching to. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think it is about the connection that you establish with the investor, the amount that you're able to de-risk the investment in their eyes with previous traction or future vision and how you're planning to approach things, and finally that warm introduction or lead to make sure that you actually get the right set of intros to the investor so that they can make time for you and take the meeting in the first place.
That's super interesting. Yeah. I think a lot of people, obviously that's like a huge goal of theirs to achieve. And even like myself personally, as I explore more of the startup space, being an angel investor, being a venture capitalist is something that's super appealing to me. So I really appreciate that answer.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, before I ask the final question, I would kind of like to ask a follow-up. You said that different angel investors have different goals. They're basically different types of angel investors. What kind of angel investor are you? How would you self-describe yourself?
What kind of angel investor am I? That's a great question. I would say that I like to make early bets. As a pre-seed founder, I'm surrounded by other pre-seed founders. So in the beginning, how I got involved was really just by asking friends if I could invest in their deals, right? I'm also a highly value additive investor in the sense that I am in the trenches as an operator, as a founder. I've been there, right? A lot of angel investors might not have started their own companies in the past. And so they might be investing a bit on the sidelines, with a theoretical understanding of what it's like to run a company, but not necessarily something that they've actually done themselves. I also like to invest in consumer products, but also when B2B makes sense, I definitely also will take a serious look. And that's because I've been on both sides. I'm a consumer founder, right? Because that is a consumer product at the end of the day, but I'm also a startup founder. And so all the enterprise software products that I use, those are all B2B. So I've kind of had experience. I can use my own knowledge to an extent. I also have networks of friends that I can help vouch for in terms of, hey, like, how does this deal look? Or, what do you think about this market, since it's not my market, it's your market, right? And so there's always ways that you can do diligence, and I try to be careful with my time and energy and investments. But when I do invest in, I'm all in, trying to help the founder wherever I can, make introductions whenever possible. And that's a little bit about my style and what kind of angel investor I am.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, you touched on this a little bit. You talked about B2B. The final question that I have is, as an investor, specifically as an angel investor, which industries are you most excited about right now?
I'm super excited about the future of consumer. There's a lot that's been going on with consumer social. I don't think that Gen Z will ultimately stay on Facebook, right? I also don't think that Instagram will go the distance in terms of in 10 years, it's still going to be the platform where the first cool things that happen are posted there. So I think there's a lot of cool, innovative things happening for consumer products that I'm really invested in. I also will look in B2B. So for example, as a startup founder, I'm particularly interested in things that small and medium-sized enterprises or maybe fast-growing ventures have to use and utilize, especially if these are high-friction products. So for example, I just invested in Mercury's Series B round, which they had an open crowdfunding campaign for users of Mercury. That's a startup thing, right? So every day as a founder, I'm watching that bank account. I'm making sure I utilize the features that they have. That's something that I actually use a lot. And so there's some really interesting plays in B2B and fintech especially. And then on the consumer side, I think social products or things that facilitate purchases like e-commerce, etc. Those are interesting to me as well.
That's really interesting because I actually made an account on Mercury about a week ago. So that's really cool that you invested in them. But yeah, no, I mean, it's something that we'll, like Jack and I will study a little bit more as we progress in our journey as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you again, Yehong. It really is a pleasure to have you on. Jack and I are really excited about Zette and your startup and your product. We're really anticipating its launch. So yeah, again, thanks. You're always welcome back on sometime in the future. But yeah, like I hope everything goes well.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Let me know if you have any questions. You can reach me on Twitter at Yehong Zhu, or you can follow Zette at Zette Media.
Sounds great. All right, thank you for listening, everyone.